Hi everyone, Jerry here with BoaterInput. One of the most important but often neglected aspects of your rig is the trailer. But we've all seen that poor soul who had to leave his beautiful boat on the side of the road because of a breakdown on the way to the lake. I know it certainly has happened to me before. And while we can't prevent all mishaps from occurring, there are some simple precautions that we can do to reduce the chances of that happening to each of us. So in today's video, I'm going to show you most everything you need to do to maintain your boat trailer. We'll cover all the key stuff: tires, bearings, brakes, lights, and more. And at the end of this video, I will share how you can download my free trailer maintenance checklist to help you keep track of it all, so you'll want to stick around for that. So to get started, let's take a look at some of the key reasons for trailer failures. According to a Boat US analysis of trailer assist calls, the number one reason for needing assist was the tires at 44%. This was followed by wheel bearings and hubs at 21% and axles at 11%. Now we're going to go over each of these areas, starting with the tires, and then we'll cover the other items subsequently. Okay, so let's start with the tires. One simple but critical thing you should do before every trip is to check your tire pressure. An underinflated tire will cause excessive wear and heat buildup, which is one of the most common reasons for tires coming apart. We've all seen those big chunks of tire spread all over the highway from semi-trucks, especially during the summertime. And this is often due to excess heat. So be sure your tires are inflated to the max PSI level listed on the sidewall. Next thing you want to do is inspect your tread and your sidewalls for, make sure the tread is not too worn and that you don't have any cracks along the sidewall that may indicate dry rot. And you should ideally do this before every trip, because even a small crack means that the rubber is breaking down and your tire could fail. However, if you've seen my previous videos on boat trailer tires, you know that these tires usually need to be replaced due to age, not tread wear or cracking. That's because the rubber in trailer tires degrades fairly rapidly over time, even more so than with passenger tires. Therefore, you should check the 4-digit DOT code that's printed on the sidewall. And I'll show you a close-up of that. The first 2 digits represent the week, and the last 2 represent the year in which the tire was manufactured. So if your tires are more than, say, 5 or 6 years old, you should probably replace them even if the tread still looks good. Now, in my case, the code is 1718, meaning that these tires were manufactured in the 17th week of 2018, which puts them at around 7 years old at the time of this video. Now, since I live on the water, I rarely trailer my boat, but I'll be sure to replace my tires before I take them anywhere. Otherwise, that could be a problem. Now, I ignored my own advice on this earlier this year with my other trailer back over here, and I had a blowout about 10 minutes down the road, even though my tires were kept indoors and they appeared to be in perfect shape. So again, if your tires are, say, over 6 years old, pretty good idea to just go ahead and replace them regardless of the condition. Now, another thing you want to do is to check your lug nuts on your tires. Once or twice a year, you should check them and tighten them as needed. Usually between 90 to 120 foot-pounds if you happen to have a torque wrench. But if not, just make sure that they are good and snug. Now, if you store your trailer over winter or for long periods, put boards or pavers under the tires if it's parked on grass. This is because moisture from the grass will degrade the rubber quicker than if it was parked on, say, pavement or gravel. So you want to get your tires off of that. So you can use something like this, paver. And if your trailer is stored outside, use tire covers to help prevent UV damage, which could shorten your tire's life even further. Next up are the bearings, and these little parts can cause big problems if you ignore them. But before we get into bearing maintenance, I think it's helpful to first explain how the overall system works. So here's a simple graphic I created to help show the critical trailer parts related to the wheels and the bearings. First, you have the spindle, which is often welded to the tip of the axle and does not rotate. Next, you have a seal to help hold the grease in that is adjacent to the inner bearing that goes inside the hub. There's also an outer bearing that goes inside the hub from the outer end. And though I don't show it in this diagram, many boat trailers will also have a bearing buddy that looks like this. That is attached to the outside of the hub, which helps keep the grease in and water out. Now, this particular one here, this silver cap, is not the Bearing Buddy brand, but does much the same thing. Of course, the wheel attaches to the hub through the lug nuts and rotates around the spindle via the bearings. Now, in order for the system to work properly, the spindle needs to be smooth and corrosion-free, and the bearings need to be well greased. If not, the wheel could seize up and create serious problems for you on the road. Therefore, it's very important that your bearings are properly greased, the bearings that are inside this hub, and that your seal is intact to prevent the grease from spilling out, and that water is not allowed to penetrate and compromise your grease, causing your bearings to fail. So, how do we do this? First, you should inspect your hub at least once a year or more often if you use your boat frequently or travel considerable distances. In my case, there's a little cap here that I popped off, and I can see that there's plenty of grease down there. Now, if you have a bearing buddy system, what you need to do is press in on the cylinder at the top, the cylinder lid, and if it depresses, that means you have grease behind it. But if you can't depress it, that means that spring-loaded cylinder has contracted all the way, and so you were low on grease. So you'll need to add a marine grease if you are in fact low. A marine grease is more water resistant and therefore less likely to wash out when you submerge your trailer. So that's why you need to use the right grease. But it's important to note that you should be careful if mixing different types of grease, since not all are compatible and could result in failure. That's why I've actually have multiple grease guns with different types of grease loaded. Now, here is a grease compatibility chart that you can download via a link in the video description. Also, just as a little too little grease can be problematic, adding too much grease or adding it too aggressively can be an issue as well. That's because you could damage the seal that I showed you earlier, causing the grease to spill out or to get some on the inside of your hub. That could reduce your braking ability if your trailer is equipped with brakes. Therefore, you should always add the grease slowly and ideally rotate your wheel as you add it to help distribute the grease evenly. Also, be sure to wipe off any excess grease that may ooze out on the inside or the outside of the hub. Now, besides making sure your bearings are properly greased, another thing you should do at least once a year is to jack up your trailer and try wiggling your tires. If you have any play in them, that could mean you have a failing bearing, a bad spindle, or the nut holding the hub in place is too loose. Either way, if your wheel is wobbly, you should definitely check that out before hitting the road. So now let's talk about your frame and axles. If you boat in saltwater, you should rinse your trailer after every trip. That's critical. Even better, bring along a pump-up sprayer and add some salt away to spray away critical areas right after launching your boat. This keeps the salt from eating away at your trailer while you're out in the water for several hours at a time. Now, whether you boat in freshwater or salt, all boaters should inspect their frame for rust or corrosion at least once a year. You especially want to check your axles, any U-bolts, fasteners, or joints. And if you see rust, you want to scrape it off or clean it off and then coat it with some paint or a rust inhibitor like Fluid Film, Corrosion X, or POR 15, which is a paint. Alternatively, some saltwater boaters like to dab some marine grease on all sensitive areas to inhibit corrosion. Now, while you're down there, this is a good time to also check for any loose bolts and tighten as needed. And inspect your leaf springs if you have them to make sure there are no cracks. Next, let's talk about brakes. If your trailer has brakes, give them a quick check at least once a year. Inspect your brake lines to make sure they are not cracked or leaking. Also, one thing that is often overlooked is your brake fluid. If it gets too low, you'll either lose braking or get air in your lines, which will lead to additional maintenance hassles. So it's really easy to do. You just pop off the cap and pop off the inner cap and pour in some brake fluid. You need most trailers take DOT 3 or DOT 4 brake fluid, And that's all there is to it, really simple. Finally, when you're trailering your boat, be sure to listen to any squealing noise when applying brakes, as this might indicate that it's maybe time to replace your brake pads. So now let's talk about your bunks and rollers if you have those. I mean, this is obviously something that's easier to check if your boat is in the water. You should check your bunk boards for rot or torn carpeting. Any tears could end up scratching your hull, so you'll want to take care of that fairly quickly. Now, I replaced the bunks on my tractor trailer a few years ago because they were warped and rotted and some of the lag screws came out. So I don't know if you can see this, but this board was pretty warped, and so I replaced it. The good news is it's fairly easy to do. All you need is some pressure treated boards, some marine carpet, and some 1/2-inch stainless steel staples. Now, if you have rollers on your trailer, you want to check them periodically to check for rust and to see if they are still rotating. And here's the roller at the front of my tractor trailer. And if they are a little bit stiff, you may want to apply some lithium grease so that they will roll a little bit better. That'll also help to deter corrosion. Now, not all items that look like rollers are in fact rollers. So here's my other trailer. And what you have up here looks like a roller, but this is actually a bow stop. This is not intended to roll, so don't get confused by that. The next area of trailer maintenance is your lights and wiring. You should obviously test your trailer lights before every trip, just to make sure your lights, your brake lights, your turn signals are all working properly. Also inspect your electrical connections and clean your contacts or use an electrical contact cleaner if they are dirty or if corrosion is present. It's also a good idea to apply a little dielectric grease for a better connection and to defer future corrosion. Okay, so the last area that we need to maintain with your trailer is at the front of your trailer, where we'll find the winch, the jack, and the coupler. So let's start with the winch. The first thing you want to do is inspect the winch strap, which is something that you should do really before every trip. This is the one thing that keeps your boat from sliding off the back of your trailer when you're towing it down the road or backing down the ramp. If it looks a little worn or starting to fray, just go ahead and replace it. A new strap is cheap and fairly easy to replace, so not a big deal. Next, at least once or twice a year, you should spray a lubricant like white lithium grease around the crank handle and bolts and any moving parts to help them operate smoothly and to deter corrosion. And while you're doing that, go ahead and wipe some heavy marine grease over the gears, the winch gears themselves, and then turn the crank to help distribute it. Now, for the trailer jack, if it's starting to get stiff, remove the top cap and grease the gears inside with the marine grease. Now, my particular jack has a Zerk fitting, so I can just connect it there, pump it a few times, and I'm good to go. And then once or twice a year, you should turn the crank all the way to extend the jack fully, and then apply a white lithium marine grease or a marine grease at the top portion of the shaft, and then retract it to work it in. Also be sure to lubricate the crank and the wheel too, so that it operates smoothly. Now, lastly, one thing that I neglected for years is the trailer coupler. This, of course, is what attaches to the hitch ball, but if left untreated, you will have metal on metal contact, which will cause it to squeak when towing and grind off some of the chrome plating on your hitch ball, leading to corrosion. So at least once a year, you should clean the inside of the coupler with a rag or paper towels and then wipe on some marine grease. Another good practice before every trip is to apply a thin layer of grease on the top of the hitch ball to further reduce that metal on metal contact. I think most any grease or marine grease will do, but they actually do make a hitch ball grease specifically for that purpose if you want to go the extra step. So there you have a thorough maintenance check for your boat trailer. If you do these things once or twice a year, it'll help keep you safe, save you some money, and extend the life of your trailer. Now, for your convenience, I provide links to each of the products mentioned in today's video in the video description. If you use these links and purchase the products or something else, I'll receive a small commission that will help defray some of the cost to produce this video and would be greatly appreciated. And if you would like my free trailer maintenance checklist where I go over each of these items and when you should do them, I provide a link to that as well in the video description. So you can just go there and find that. Now, if you found this video helpful, please click on that like button. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel to get my weekly tips and insights to help you purchase, equip, and maintain your boat. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the water.